بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant all of us the sincere intention and the proper comprehension. Allahumma ameen. Okay, let's go on to talk about the second advice. So the second advice is working together as one. So Sheikh Samir, may Allah protect him and grant him a long life, he gave advice about this. He said that we should remain working together and united, meaning stay together. Even if one of us sees from their brother or sister what they do not like or what they're not used to. This is because this is a community that is better for us to put our children in. It is the community that is better for us to be part of. And what community is that? It means it's a community where people are engaged in learning and teaching and spreading the truth and upholding the truth and protecting the truth. So why would a person in these strange times that we live in want to take their family, for example, and themselves away from that community? So he said, if one wanted to move themselves far away from such community, where will this person go? And with whom will they cooperate? And with whom will they get along? Think about it. SubhanAllah, when it comes to these matters, a person has to be so honest with themselves. Really, why would they want to take their family and move away, for example? Why? Is it for money? Is it for power? Is it for status and authority somewhere else? Is it a better location to live in, like a house? Like why? And then who will they have around them instead? Who will they be dealing with? Who will they be cooperating with? A person needs to think about these things. Who will their children grow up with? If not a community in which people are engaged in learning the Islamic knowledge and teaching it and spreading it and protecting those around them. If it's not this community, then what will you have instead of that? What will you have instead of that? What will you be strengthening in your child if not these matters? So he said, those who do that, those who leave such a community, keep their family away and the like, he said, they will find themselves little by little drifting away from the path of truth. And little by little will find themselves not speaking out the truth. He's saying that they will start not even speaking out when they need to speak out on something, so to please others. So they please others and blend in with others. They would keep their mouth closed. They would stay silent in situations where they're not supposed to stay silent. They're supposed to speak out and say something. But because they're afraid of not being accepted now in different circles and different other communities now that they're trying to be part of, they would stay silent in situations where religiously they're not supposed to stay quiet. They're supposed to speak out and say something. So he's saying they will stop ordering the good and forbidding the evil. He said, and they will begin to overlook certain bad things. And subhanAllah, the more bad a person sees and gets accustomed to being around, the more desensitized they become, right? Now imagine a child that grows up just seeing those things and just hearing those things. They will believe that this is the norm, this is how the norm should be, or that this is normal. Then if you want those people to speak out and to say something when they're supposed to, they won't. How would they? How would they when they're not used to that, especially the child? They've never seen their parent doing it. They weren't ordered to do it. They weren't taught to do it. This is all ingraining things in that child or these children for the rest of their life, except whomever Allah has mercy upon and guides to the truth and guides to the way that Allah accepts. Now, on the other hand, if someone does something in our community, in a community where people are constantly engaged in teaching and bidding the good and forbidding the evil and advising, if someone did something in a community like this that you don't like, and you know it's not good according to the religion, this thing is not good, it's sinful, for example, then at least if you tell them that what they did was not good, they wouldn't dare say to you, yes, it is good. They wouldn't, right? Because these are people that are around the knowledge. They wouldn't contradict the religion. If you advise someone, then as long as you are saying what is in compliance with the religion, they will not contradict it at the least. And subhanAllah, many times things that are not on track in the best way would come back on track with patience and through perseverance. Yani with patience, a person would find that after some time, those things would come back on track. So it's important for one to be patient with their brothers and sisters. It's really, really, really important. Sheikh Samir, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, he said, I saw some people that started off going down the way of attacking and speaking ill about our brothers. And they stopped warning against the misguided people. So instead of warning against people that are actually misguided and they're spreading contradictions of the religion and they're spreading so much harm in the world, rather than warning against those people, some people, they start attacking some of the only people that are trying to fix things. You might not like that person, but it doesn't give you an excuse to attack them in a way that would harm the da'wah. It doesn't. So he said, I saw some people, they started off going down this path of taking stabs at Muslims. And he means Muslims that are working in the da'wah, that are trying to spread the belief and trying to teach people about the people of misguidance and warning against them, and spreading the personal obligatory knowledge and strengthening the da'wah. It doesn't mean that all of these people will be perfect people, but what they're doing is so important that one needs to be careful what harm they bring. Any harm that they bring, a person would need to be really careful with that. He said, instead, they occupied themselves with talking about our brothers and our sisters. And perhaps in some of these matters, he said, they were correct in what they said, and maybe at times they were wrong. However, they occupied themselves with attacking and stabbing at this group of Muslims working in and associated with the da'wah. And they were driving people away from the truth. Subhanallah. Wallahi, I've seen with my own eyes as well. people that started speaking ill about people that were working in the da'wah, and the things that fell upon them afterwards, because they wouldn't leave that alone. And I've also seen that they were advised. SubhanAllah. Many of these people, if not all of them, they were advised, don't do that. Fear Allah. This can lead to catastrophes for you. It can lead to so many bad things and outcomes for you and your family. Be careful. And some of those people wouldn't listen. Many times Allah sends people to advise them and warn them, and they don't listen. And then they get worse and worse and worse. SubhanAllah. Alhamdulillah, who granted us to learn from the mistakes of others so that we don't fall into those mistakes. Alhamdulillah, the one who granted us to learn and take lessons from the mistakes of other people. And the wise and intelligent Muslim would always take lessons from situations of other people, because situations repeat themselves. He said, this jama'ah, yani this group of people that teach and are engaged in the religious knowledge in this way, he said they are the ones standing in the face of misguided people nowadays. Meaning, if you attack one of these people and you harm one of these people, you're harming the da'wah. Even if it's like indirectly, your intention is not to harm the da'wah, but you are harming the da'wah. How can a person not see that? Sometimes a person can be so wrapped up in their emotions that they don't see the harm that they're bringing to the religion. This is something very, very important. I remind myself and you to be careful. If you have any problem with a person that is working in the da'wah, you have to be very careful in how you approach it. This is a hardship upon the person. They need to navigate it in the way that Allah accepts. Because it can turn, if they make a wrong decision, it can really blow up upon them. Upon them. Many people went astray after bringing harm to the da'wah. And the thing is, they're not usually trying to bring harm directly to the da'wah. It's because they have issues with people, they have issues with teachers, they have issues with other people in the community, and then these issues, they blow up. So even if one had a personal issue with someone who works in the da'wah, they should deal with it discreetly, in a wise way. You have to be wise and intelligent about this, because this is not your average person that you have an issue with. It's a person now that is tied to the da'wah. You have to put the religion first. You have to think about the consequences. So the person would deal with something like that without bringing unnecessary attention to the matter, and without getting people involved that do not need to be involved. Or they don't have the religious knowledge and understanding to be involved in such a matter. Not everyone has enough religious knowledge and understanding and intelligence and wisdom to be involved in certain matters. Just because they're your friend doesn't mean that they're automatically given like a front row seat to something. No, that's not wise. At times we have friends that we love and we care for, but we would never bring them near certain matters because it's not wise. And I'll tell you something else. Not everyone who learned the personal obligatory knowledge of the religion is worthy of advising, of giving advice in such matters. Just because they learned this amount of knowledge does not mean that they have the wisdom and the understanding that is needed to give advice in certain matters. Anyone can sit there and listen to a lesson. Yani at times a person is listening to a lesson, but they don't understand everything. Do you think that every single one of us that is here right now is at the same level of understanding? The exact same level? No. Some of us might be preoccupied right now with certain things. Like you might have this lesson on in the background and you're washing your dishes, and this one is like feeding their child and this one is doing this. Not everyone is even attentive at the same level and focused in the lesson. So if a person is involved in the da'wah on any level, they need to understand that not everything that is known and not everything that one hears and not everything that one is exposed to is like mentioned to everyone else. SubhanAllah, really, there's a lot that can be said about this, but the person needs to be intelligent. How would you like to be treated if it was you? If a person is really honest with themselves, SubhanAllah, there's so much that if it was you, you would not like for it to be said, and you wouldn't like for it to be done. And if we just treated others in that same way, a lot of harm would be avoided. A lot of harm would be avoided. Then if you add to that the element that if you have issues with people that work in the da'wah and you understand that there's a risk now that the da'wah would be harmed, if a person goes forward with that, SubhanAllah, they're really bringing it upon themselves. I haven't seen a situation where a person did that and they harmed people that were working in the da'wah and it harmed the da'wah, except that it came back on them. And it's usually really scary when it comes back on them. And it might be right away and it might not be right away. But little by little, those people's hearts would become corrupt. Usually this is what happens. It's really scary. And they don't know it because they're living, they're seeing things differently. That common sense is slowly stripped away from them, so they don't see things clearly, unfortunately. And they start going down a darker path and making worse decisions. That's what happens, and they don't see it that way. They won't see it that way except if Allah grants them to. So Shaykh Samir said one should not act in this way, and this is not what our Shaykh, Shaykh Abdullah rahimahullah ta'ala, taught us. Rather, what one should do is exert their utmost effort to fix things from the inside. He said, because if this building is torn down, then one would not be able to build a half of a quarter of a fifth of a third of a room in this building. Meaning, one would not be able to build even a small piece because there is no foundation to build it on. He said, rather, we should all be upon the way of advising. We give advice when we are able, according to the rules of the religion. And we accept advice and implement what we are advised with. And each of us should help with this. Each of our hearts should be open towards each other and toward accepting the advice from each other. So here we say that one needs to advise according to the rules of the religion because most of the people, they tend to forget the rules of the religion when it comes to personal problems or when it comes to matters involving family members, for example, or children and friends. They tend to forget the religious rules. Even if they are people, they might even be people that teach at times. When it comes to family and personal problems and children and close friends, some people, it's like they go blind and they just forget everything. And they behave in ways that are irrational. How many people would harm someone unjustly by one way or another solely because their daughter complained to them about this person? That's it, because their daughter complained. How many people would cuss that person, slander them, and bring other unjust harm to them? Or because their best friend, so-called best friend, hates them, hates a person, and so that person starts hating them too, and starts looking at them in mean ways and starts plotting against them, just because their best friend hates them. They think that this means I'm a good friend. A'udhu billah. That's not a good friend. That's an unjust person who doesn't know how to be a good friend. If they harm another person unjustly, what will they say on the Day of Judgment? Your friend is not going to come save you when you're in your grave. Or because their parent doesn't like someone, or their parent mentioned an issue that supposedly occurred between them and someone else. And so now their children start harming this other person because their parent complained to them. But some parents are not wise at all. They go and complain to their children about people. And the other way around, children complain to their parents as well, in ways that are not wise. I'm talking about in ways that are not wise. And adult children, I'm not even talking about kids, like young kids. Adult children would go and complain to their parents about different things in ways that are not wise and religiously wouldn't even be permissible. Yeah, at times they're not even permissible. It wouldn't even be permissible for you to mention what that other person said. But some people are so used to getting it off of their chest, they have to. Subhanallah. It's so sad because some parents would be tortured in the hereafter because of the way that they were with their children, because of sins that they committed due to their children. And the other way around. So much injustice takes place when people lean towards their emotions and they throw out the religious scale. Yani that religious scale, which is something that we should always have so that we can be safe. We weigh everything according to the religious scale. If a person comes and complains to you, you weigh that before you say or do anything. You weigh that according to the religious scale. You say, wait a minute, I didn't hear it from that person, so I cannot take it as a fact. I'm going to be asked about this on the Day of Judgment. What you would do is, for example, you take that person that came to complain to you and you say, come, let's go and fix this problem with so-and-so. I'll help you if I can, come. But you can't take their word as a fact because you don't know that it's a fact. This is what the Prophet taught us, alayhi salatu wassalam. If a person comes to complain to you, you cannot take their word as a fact, even if you love that person. Even if you're like, I don't think this person would lie. Okay, you don't think that person would lie, but still religiously, you haven't heard both sides. You always have to keep room for that you have not heard both sides. But some people, they forget all of that. They forget all of that, subhanAllah. And at times, and pertaining to some matters, different opinions would exist. Yani some people would have different opinions. So at times there would not be a decisive decision pertaining to certain matters that are taking place. There wouldn't be something there that shows that this opinion is better than that one. For example, it wouldn't be obvious. Sheikh Samir advised and our teachers advise in such matters, we should be easygoing. And again, subhanAllah, this is easy for someone to fall into, that because they don't get their way in something, it causes a lot of problems for them and others, and it pushes them away at times. Why? Because they did not get their way. It goes back to emotions again. A lot of this, it goes back to one's emotions, really. Now, it's not necessary for me to get my way in everything. It's not necessary. It doesn't have to be that I have to have control over everything. Some people have an issue with that. Like they feel like they have to control many things. And if their way is not what is chosen, and if their opinion is not the one that is led with, they feel a certain way. It's okay if things go according to my sister's opinion, my sister in Islam or my brother in Islam. It's okay if things go according to their way, as long as their way is in compliance with the religion. Meaning, as long as it does not go against the religion in anything. Now, if they were committing a sin, that's different. Of course, we would have an issue with that. We would have an issue with that because we want to support the religion. So yes, we would have an issue with that. But if someone has an opinion, and that opinion, it might not be something I'm used to, right? It might not be something I'm used to. And it might not be something I really like, for example. However, their opinion is not sinful. And it might have its own benefits, which I'm not even aware of. Their opinion might have its own benefits. They might have reasons for choosing that opinion, for example, that I'm not aware of. But even, let's say that wasn't even the case. If a Muslim is doing something, I'm not used to the way that they're doing it. However, they're not committing a sin. They can do that. They can do that. And sometimes, subhanAllah, like you can voice your concern if you have a concern. You can say, perhaps this way is better. Yani you can mention what your opinion is. But if your opinion is not taken, don't have an issue in such a way that it would bring harm to that person or the da'wah or the like. And don't speak about it with other people unless you have a religious excuse. Because then just to get something off of their chest, they might put a taste in someone else's mouth, a bad taste for someone else. Does that make sense? Like they might in some way shine a light that is not so good about another Muslim. But you don't want someone to do that with you. You don't want someone to affect the way you see another Muslim. So a person needs to be very mindful of all of these matters. SubhanAllah. Some people put so much effort for their own desire and what they want, but they forget what is more beneficial religiously. SubhanAllah. And you know how we mentioned that many problems that end up leading people astray, that revolve around the da'wah and things like this, they start with people having an issue with another person. A lot of those things are because their opinion wasn't taken and someone else's opinion was put forward. It'll be something like that. And then it'll be like, oh, it happened a second time, a third time, a fourth time. Now this person feels like they're all out to get them. When that's not the case. When that's not even the case. But they took it too personal. And subhanAllah, you know, the pious people, they stay away from these things. May Allah make me and you amongst them. They really, subhanAllah, Allah protects them. It's like they have a way of navigating through these matters. They stay away from them. And they are people that think, yani when they're alone, they'll contemplate on these matters. They think a lot. They think about consequences of different things before they get involved in them, before they say something. What did Sheikh Samir say? He said, many people started going down this path. He means like the path of wanting everything to go according to their plan and their opinion, and them rejecting the opinion and way of their brother or sister, although it was not something that went against the religion in the first place. But some people, as you can see, they take it too personal. They make it a personal issue. And this is not good. This is not good. A lot of harm can start this way. So a person needs to detach from that. And I remind myself first before I remind you. He said, and I saw what happened to them. So he said, I saw many people go down that path and I saw what happened to them. He said some of them ended up as kuffar in the end. May Allah protect us. Meaning, he said they started with these issues and it eventually led to this person contradicting the religion and leaving al-Islam. Because one thing leads to another, one thing leads to another. And when that first decision is bad, usually it just leads to another bad decision and another bad decision. And the person falls into more sins and more sins and more harm. A'udhu billah. And some of them, and I have seen things like this. Subhanallah, I have been made aware of things like this too that have happened to other people. They actually committed kufr. May Allah protect us. They get to a point where they have fed their desire so much that people can't advise them anymore. And it gets to the point where they actually contradict the religion. Because they don't want to give in to the other way, which is the good way. They don't want to give in to the advice that people are giving them, to the guidance that people are bringing to them. They don't want to take that. And there's arrogance involved in this, obviously. They ended up contradicting the religion. They become so stubborn that it leads to that. He said, some of them ended up calling others to kufr. So they didn't just commit kufr, they started calling others to the way of blasphemy as well. He said some of them ended up selling liquor. Yani one thing led to another. They took a different path. They ended up selling liquor. Alcohol, yani. A'udhu billah. He said some of them ended up as people who advertise for misguided people, deceiving people in what pertains to those misguided people, making people believe that they are people of truth instead of people of misguidance. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. He said some of them ended up taking money from misguided people. Imagine that, a person that can be bought and sold so easily. A person that stands for nothing. So they sway with the wind. The wind takes them that way, they sway to the right. The wind takes them to the left, they sway to the left. He said some of them ended up leaving out praying. He said, I saw this with my own eyes. This is a dangerous path for one to take. Didn't it come in the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُ الذِّئْبُ مِنَ الْغَنَمِ الْقَاصِيَةِ, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam said, certainly the wolf eats the sheep that has ostracized itself from the herd. This means that such person, for example, chose to be ostracized and to keep their children away from this community, the one that we spoke about that is engaged in the knowledge and engaged in goodness, on purpose. They did this on purpose, to be away from that community on purpose. That was their intention. So they will deal with the harmful consequences of that. Because the wolf devours the sheep that strays away. And I'll mention a couple things and then we'll end, insha'Allah ta'ala. But first, let me see this message here. You said, was it because they were upset? I'm not sure what you were referring to. To change so drastically? Yeah, so what we're saying is, many times what happens is a person has an issue with another Muslim. And we're speaking in the context of the da'wah. That's what we're speaking about right now. But this can be applied in different things as well to some extent. But we're speaking about the da'wah. Yani the call to Islam, teaching people the knowledge that they need to be safe in the hereafter. In a community that does this, when people have issues with each other, the harms and the effects that can happen due to that are far greater than in other situations. Why? Because it's a community of people of truth, meaning they're calling to the truth, they are defending the truth. It doesn't mean that they're all perfect Muslims. It doesn't mean that they are awliya, highly righteous Muslim people. No. It means what they're defending is the truth. What they're calling to is the truth. What they're supporting is the truth. And so if you have an issue with a person like that, you need to be very careful how you deal with it. Because since that person is engaged in such a community, it comes back on this community somehow. More people get involved, more people hear about it. People have different emotions. Emotions are stirred in different ways. Other people start having other issues with people. And sometimes they make it public. They make it a public issue. And like we said, they get people involved that do not need to be involved. So in situations like this, it happens when a person has an issue with another person. And like what we were mentioning right here, is at times it's because one's opinion was chosen over a different person's opinion. And that's literally how it would start at times. And if that person persists, subhanAllah, at times it ends up leading that person somewhere down the line to actually contradicting the religion. Because they're so stubborn in getting their way, in getting what they want and going after it, that they don't accept the advice, they don't accept the guidance, they don't accept this. They might have a sit down with someone, they don't accept that. Then it leads to them actually contradicting something in the religion. Someone would say something to them and they would say something that contradicts it because they're so stubborn. And they're doing it for their nafs. They're not doing it for a greater good. They're not doing it for the sake of Allah. They're not doing it for their hereafter. They're doing it for their nafs, meaning for their ego. Does that make sense, iPad? Sometimes a person can't fathom how something would start in a way like what we're saying and end up in something so drastic like that. But it happens, subhanallah. Didn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tell us that there are people that it would seem to us that they are amongst the people of paradise? It would seem to us, subhanallah. You look at them, you would say, mashallah, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're engaged in this. And Actually, Allah has eternally willed for them to be amongst the people of hellfire. So what happens is, before they die, at some point before they die, it could be years before they die or right before they die, their situation changes due to something that happens in their life, and what Allah willed comes to pass. They end up dying in a bad state. And the Prophet also told us that there are people that it would seem to us that they are amongst the worst of people. They are amongst the people of hellfire, right? You look at them and you say, A'udhu billah, I would never do what this person is doing. Or I would never be involved in what this person is involved in. And then subhanallah, their life goes on and something happens, something takes place, something clicks for them in their heart. Their situation changes. If they were not Muslim, they would embrace al-Islam. If they were like a major sinner, they would repent from everything, and their situation changes and they become a good Muslim, a practicing Muslim, a repenting, practicing, implementing Muslim. And they would die upon a good state because Allah eternally willed for them a good state. So what Allah eternally willed will definitely happen for every slave. Subhanallah. That's why when we're teaching people, and I remind myself and you this, don't look down at other Muslims. It might be, for example, a woman that does not wear a hijab that comes to you for advice or comes to you seeking something, seeking some help. It might be a person that you know about them, they're committing some sins, even major sins. But you don't know who will be guided. That person might end up having a higher status than all of us because they have something in them that Allah knows. Isn't it the case that some of the highly righteous Muslims, the awliya, like they actually reached al-wilaya, they were major sinners before? Isn't that the case? Yes, it is. Some of them were major sinners. It was mentioned about about one of them, that she was a prostitute. Subhanallah, a major sinner. Imagine that, having sexual intercourse outside of wedlock without being married. And for money, it makes the sin even worse. A'udhu billah. Some of them were waylayers. They used to like stand in a certain road or something like that, and they would attack the people coming through, like the caravans coming through, and they would steal all their belongings and the like. Some of them used to drink alcohol. But you know something, subhanallah, when it comes to prayer, it's like rarer to find that they left out the prayer. Especially back then, like a long time ago. Nowadays, yes, a lot of people don't pray. But back then, when it came to prayer, subhanallah, even people who fell into major sins, they would pray. Prayer was something that they were so afraid to neglect. And as you know, the scholars said that the one who does not pray, he is very close to al-kufr, to blasphemy. That's how strong his sin is. My point is, these people, there are people that committed these different sins, and at that moment that they were committing it, or at this time, people probably looked at them like they were horrible people, right? And losers. And subhanallah, Allah willed for these people to be amongst the highly ranking Muslims from this nation. And there are many, 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 many others that will never reach that rank from the Muslims, even though they would have looked down at those people during that time. So we never know what Allah has willed for a certain person of a high status. We don't know. We don't know what they have in their heart. At times, if a person hears a certain statement, their whole life would change after that. And that's what happened to some of these people. They were given an advice and it just did something. It clicked for them. And then their whole life just changed. So you never know. If a person comes to one of us and they want advice, don't look down at them. Even if you know that you don't commit the sins that they commit, for example. You have way more knowledge than they do, or something like that. Don't look down at them in a way that you think that you are better and you see yourself as so much better and you have this pride in you, because they might become much, much, much higher than you in status. And you might be able to benefit them in ways that you wouldn't imagine. Subhanallah. Allah has guided many people on the hands of other slaves of His, so you never know. This is something to keep in mind as well. Okay, let me mention this next part and then we'll stop, inshaAllah ta'ala. So, take the analogy of being aboard a ship. The ship of safety. So, we call it the ship of safety. The ship of safety that this honorable association is, basically. If someone chooses not to board the ship, is it still possible for them to reach the shore nowadays with all of the, chaos and destruction and evil that exists nowadays and injustice on earth? If someone chooses not to board the ship, is it still possible for them to reach the shore? Yes, it is possible. First of all, I want to mention something. Our association, alhamdulillah ta'ala, it's in the forefront when it comes to teaching the religious knowledge and warning against the people of misguidance and protecting the creed of the prophets. It's at the forefront, without a doubt. But that doesn't mean that there are no other people and groups of Muslims that are upon the truth. There are. So yes, they have their ships of safety as well too, in that sense. Yani their ship and our ship would be, if they are upon what is correct and they are doing things according to the way that Allah accepts, then it's the same in that sense. However, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people that choose to do their own thing. Is it possible that a person would not stick to the people of truth nowadays and the communities of truth, and they would still find their way to the shore? Yes, it's possible, but they will have to face the consequences of the path that they've chosen. Yani, these people would be, in this analogy that we're giving, swimming through open, dangerous waters filled with sharks and jellyfish and other harmful creatures of the sea, while enduring the crashing waves of the deep ocean that toss them about this way and that way. If they do eventually make it to the shore, it will be after immense effort, you can imagine, having fought to escape many dangers of the sea. They may arrive bruised, scratched, bleeding, and exhausted, and far later than they could have. Yani they could have made it to shore way before, but it took them a lot longer. They exhausted more effort. Meanwhile, those who boarded the ship were protected from most of the ocean's harms, safeguarded from its traps and catastrophes, and carried smoothly and securely toward their destination, toward shore. So a person needs to keep this analogy in mind, I think. It's It's important because we're not living at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. We're not living at the time of the followers of the companions. We're not living at those times, in those first 3 centuries, when the best of people from this nation lived. We're not even living in the following centuries. We're at the end of this nation. We're considered the end of the nation. And it's known that the people who live at this time, they have a lot of afflictions and they go through things that the beginning of this nation did not go through. We have so many distractions, so many more harmful things that would cool us away from what is good. So a person needs to be careful. Yani being a part of a community that is, like we said, engaged in teaching and spreading the good and bidding the good and forbidding the evil, this is so helpful for a person being safe in the hereafter. How could the person not want that and want to stay away from that and keep their children away from that? And it was said, نحن على السفينة ركب معنا من ركب ومن لم يركب فنحن ماضون, which means we are aboard the ship. Whoever boards with us, boards. And whoever does not, we are still moving forward. Meaning, with or without you, we are moving forward. So one of us should not become like the lone sheep. That is because we are not only surrounded by one wolf, we are surrounded by many wolves, many dangers, especially at this time that we live in nowadays. So one needs to be on alert. And Allah, the Exalted, knows best. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.